Great. You introduce yourself. Okay, great. Let's begin.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm from Connecticut and I'm a senior this year. I recently got accepted into Princeton and I plan on going into applied sciences. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the college application process and how you can prepare for it, especially in high school. I will be speaking in English.
Okay, thank you.
To start off with, I know I said mostly I'm gonna be talking about high school, but I wanted to just briefly, for a second, talk about middle school, is don't worry too much in middle school, explore your interests, and you could take a look at, classes that are a little bit more difficult than your typical middle school classes. For example, I got a head start because I started taking high school classes in middle school, actually. And then once you get into high school, you can work on taking more college level classes such as AP classes or IB classes, depending on whichever your school offers.
Okay,
Try to do things you're interested in. Yeah.
sorry. You said you take high school classes in middle school, for example.
I took honors algebra 2 in middle school because my middle school was like right next to my high school, and I talked with the principal basically, and he let me just take classes in high school.
That's
it
great.
wa- I know most schools won't allow you to do that,
Yes.
but if you know there's a possibility, you could try to go ahead that way, but you don't have to, obviously.
Okay.
um so in high school, like I said, try to take harder courses, try to do things that you're interested in and not don't feel like you need to do something someone else is doing. Freshman year, you're going to be settling in, so you don't want to stress too much, but you want to look at your school courses and prepare for those harder courses if possible. So I would go onto your school website or talk to a counselor and look at all the possible courses you can take in the future and try to plan those out, because there are certain courses that will have prerequisites that you want to have like ready before you take those classes. So later on, um, you won't have to realize that you suddenly can't take the course because you don't have the prerequisites done and waste time. Freshman year and I guess sophomore year as well, you want to be looking for as many opportunities as you can, and especially in extracurriculars or in volunteering. Get to know the people around you, especially your counselors and teachers, because later on you will want to ask them for recommendations. In general, start picking your courses, increasing in difficulty as you go. If you know what your interests are, try to spike your courses towards those. For example, if you're interested in, let's say, engineering, try to take more difficult math classes and focus on those. But you also want to prove that you aren't lacking in other subjects. So if you're focusing on like math and science, you'll still also want to take like one or two AP classes in the humanities just to show that you're not failing in those courses.
Mhm.
Another thing you will want to do in high school is volunteering, but you don't want to waste it and like spend it on too many things. Work on what kind of impact you can make instead of how many hours you do, because admissions officers are very tired of just purely seeing people saying, "Oh, I did 300 hours of volunteering." um they want to see what kind of changes you've made in your community, especially if you have some kind of leadership. um so important things that you want to kind of focus on are, I just said this, but leadership, your dedication, critical thinking, compassion, and especially collaboration in your extracurriculars. This goes like especially true for us because there's this there's a stereotype of Chinese people and Asian people in general being smart, but being loners as well. So you don't necessarily want to fit into that. Of course, don't try to pretend to be someone you're not, but you do want to see and show that you can work other people with other people.
Okay, so
Um,
Emily, I remember you mentioned several words. Could you repeat that again? So you said you want to show those characters in the essay, right?
in your essays, but also in like your extracurriculars and your descriptions. So you want to focus on the impact you can make in your community, leadership, dedication, critical thinking, compassion, and collaboration. And I do want to mention that jobs and any significant work you do at home for like your parents, such as chores, do count if they are like you're spending like hours every day doing them. Um, you do want to focus on not necessarily fitting into certain cliches. So you don't have to feel like you have to do something if you're not truly interested in it. So, for example, musical instruments and sports are very, very common in applications. And so they aren't necessarily worth doing if you're not interested in them or if you think you truly cannot make an impact in those areas.
So what may I ask you? You mentioned sports and instruments. So what do you see as an example, maybe say pretty unique, right? Maybe for you or for your friends, pretty unique. You see it's a good example.
Um, so you could still do a musical instrument, but you
Mhm.
could do something that's not super typical.
Okay.
So instead of going, for example,
Mhm.
the traditional piano or violin, you could
Mhm.
maybe try the flute or maybe a traditional instrument. Um, I don't know about alternative for sports,
Okay.
but other extracurriculars you could do are, for example, you could create one of your own. So, like, if you want to make up some kind of group for language, if you want to do script writing like I did,
Mhm.
or if you're just able to find something that you're interested in general.
Okay.
Um, it could even just be like creating a club of your own as long as you make an impact and you aren't just sitting there and doing a certain amount of hours for the club.
Okay. So from what you said, my understanding is this part is show your personality and show how
Mhm.
you work out something, right? It's different
Yes.
from like your ability or your achievement. Like, but if you still have a good achievement, like say in sport you get to state level, instrument you
Mhm.
get state level, that also kind of good thing. But for the other side, you didn't have a good achievement, but you did something special where show other people your personality and your skills of work things out, right?
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yeah, both of those will actually work. It's just you want to kind of balance the two and not
Yeah.
necessarily focus on one unless like you're really, really good.
Okay.
Like if you make it to like, for example, nationals or internationals, and I don't really have anything else to say.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and then junior year, you will probably be taking the SAT.
Mhm.
It's not as important as it once was, but it's still very important. So you should still be practicing for it and talking to your teachers about it if possible. Um, and there's this decision between whether or not you should submit your SAT scores, and that's going to be dependent on what kind of school you apply to. A good resource is unironically actually the internet. You can kind of look stuff up and see what the general score is for that school. And if you're too far below that, then or on the lower end, then you might not want to submit your score. Um, and then they'll focus on the rest of your application instead. Another thing is your recommendations. You should be getting these from teachers you're on good terms with, especially if you feel like they know you well, and try to focus on having somebody talk about not just your academic achievements, but things that you can do outside of school or even your personality. So you will want one from you will want at least one recommendation from a teacher that is in a subject that you're going to go into. So again, with the engineering example, you might want somebody from, for example, your physics teacher or your math teacher. But most schools will also allow you to give in another one, or even more than that. So if possible, try to also get one from a different teacher or even somebody in the community. So like, I don't know, whoever you're working for or your coach. These recommendations you should be asking early for in the year. So application deadlines for regular decision are usually in January. So you will want to ask your teachers like the summer before, actually, if possible, just so they can prepare. And this way you don't have to compete with anyone else for recommendations. And if they come across any problems, you can help them. So if they realize that they wanted to say something about you, but then they didn't know enough about that part of your life, you could give that information to them.
Okay, so you mean before the summer vacation, talk with the teacher and let them have enough time to do this during the summer? Is that what you said?
That's pretty early. You could do that, yes, and honestly, that will probably make you more prepared, but you
Okay,
could wait until, like, the beginning of the school year as well.
okay, okay.
Um, and, like, don't be afraid to go up to them and remind them as well over time, because sometimes things get in the way and you don't know if they're actually working on it. Um, and you also wanna be careful of who you ask, because sometimes certain teachers might like not necessarily put in something bad about you, but put in like a concern that they have. So like I said before, if you are somebody that is pretty antisocial, they might like tell the college that.
Okay,
So yeah.
that's that's dangerous.
Yeah. And usually you won't get a chance to see your recommendations beforehand unless your teacher is being really nice and they offer to show it to you. Another very important part of your application are your essays. These you should start in the summer, just as soon as possible, because you don't want to be working on these at the same time as your normal schoolwork, because that's going to be really, really difficult, especially if you plan to take like a bunch of APs senior year. Um, you want to spend a significant amount of time on these essays, and it's not just the one Common App essay. Each school will have supplementals. Certain schools will have a lot of supplementals. So, for example, Princeton made me write like 7 essays for them.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was crazy. For those essays, you should be trying different structures of writing if possible, and give examples. So, like, show what you want to tell them instead of just directly telling them. So you can like zoom in on one specific moment and then go through it and then explain how it impacted you. Or you can like go through some kind of montage. But one thing you want to avoid is do not regurgitate your resume. That is not a good idea because one, the schools will already be seeing those, so they don't want you to just repeat the same thing over again. And two, those are really boring to read.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
They expected a story, right?
yeah, Usually,
Okay.
usually they expect some kind of narrative to
Mhm.
show your character and like why you kind of fit in with this school and what kind of impact you've made.
Okay, great.
You don't necessarily want to talk about sports just because I've spoken to my counselors about this, and they always say that a lot of people talk about sports. So if you do talk about sports and you don't have anything world changing to say, then it's gonna seem like every other essay about sports out there, unfortunately. Um, so you should probably pick something that you feel like shows off who you are, or like shows growth and a personality trait. It can be something super insignificant. Like I know somebody that wrote something about Barbie dolls.
Oh,
um, so yeah. Some schools will have a why us essay, and on that essay, you should be doing your research, but do not mindlessly flatter them. Show what you guys can do for each other and how you will also contribute to this school, not just how the school will help you. And you want to show why you match their values and their resources. Of
so
course, each huh?
so sorry, may I ask you, what do you know about the values? You mentioned you match their values. Did you do some research about any schools, their own value? For example, Princeton?
Yeah. Well, for most schools, even like the top schools, you will be able to see a lot of what they value actually straight from their website, or
Okay.
even if you have the chance to go visit them. So, obviously each school has general values that every school will value, so like, compassion and hard work and ability to grow. But for example, I would say Princeton, another one of their values is what's it? Oh gosh, forgetting English. Like resourcefulness, but also environmental sustainability. So if you go onto their campus or even straight on their website, they will have a lot about sustainability. They're on their campus, they even have started using electric buses and solar panels instead of what you would normally have. So that's a big thing. If you want to go into that kind of field, they might consider you more.
Okay.
Another thing for essays, don't use AI.
Okay.
They probably will find out. I don't know how, but
They will
these
use
are
AI
people
to
at
find
top
out.
schools. I'm pretty sure they can figure it out.
Yeah, they can use AI to find out who used the AI, right?
Yeah, probably. During senior year, you will obviously want to keep up with your classes and your submission schedules. Each school will have different requirements. So I would suggest making a Google document or a Google Sheets and keeping track of each school's requirements and their deadlines because they'll very quickly become confusing, especially if you're applying to a lot of schools.
Yes.
Senior year, you will also be filling out most probably the CSS and the FAFSA for financial aid. Those can be a little confusing just because they're on separate websites. And for the FAFSA, you will need to create your own IDs. So it's a little bit of a mess, but usually you can get help from, for example, your counselor or any career advisor you might have at your school. Um, Worst case scenario, I'm pretty sure you could ask an upperclassman. Did someone have a question?
Yeah. Anybody have questions? Thank you, Emily.
Oh no, I have a little bit more to talk about.
Mhm.
Another thing is, during senior year, your counselor will be sending a lot of your files to your schools. So don't be afraid to ask them questions or like specifics, and don't be afraid, especially to remind them about sending in files, because especially if you're in a public school system, your counselor is probably going to be dealing with several hundred students. So you want to remind them if they aren't sending in files on time. And they won't be mad at you. They know everyone is applying at the same time, and it's going to be difficult to keep track of materials. So yeah.
But
Another thing is,
lighted, nice, right?
yeah. Another thing is you should be interviewing if you can. These might give you an extra edge, especially over similar applicants. They're
Mhm.
good if you do well and you are able to show like confidence and ability to conversate with people, but they can be bad if you are really bad at like conversating in general. And you do want to be asking questions if you do have an interview. Questions are very important and will show interest. And that's about it for what I have to say.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. Anybody
Yep,
have any questions?
I don't think so.
Okay, if no question, thank you, Emily, and let's welcome Daniel to share his experience with us a little bit. Thank you, Daniel.
Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel. I am from upstate New York. I am a sophomore at Dartmouth College at the moment, and I am planning on majoring in both linguistics and computer science. So I'm doing a double major. In terms of what I have to say, a lot of it overlaps with what Emily has already said, but I will also be covering a few things that I've learned while at college, as well as just advice for the application process, essay process, and just a few other things that I don't think Emily has quite mentioned yet. So with the application process, Emily has mentioned before that colleges want a very well-rounded and strong student, but a student who also sort of spikes in certain aspects. So if you are a student who does STEM, you should really be focusing on STEM classes, focusing on doing research like that. You should be focusing on classes and clubs that pertain to what you're interested in. Colleges don't really want to see a jack of all trades because the rest of the saying is jack of all trades, master of none. If you're not good at anything but okay at everything, colleges don't really care about you. If you are really good at something, of course, you have to be at least good at everything else. That way, you are still a good student in college's eyes, but making sure that you focus on one or two things is better than losing, all of your time on everything else. Students should also take extracurriculars and classes that are interesting to them. If they just take classes because it looks good on a resume, a lot of colleges do see that and they don't really find it appealing. They think it's a bit shallow for students because the motivation is not there. It's only there for the resume. Essay should incorporate visible passions and interests. So your essay should be talking about maybe it's a club that you've already done, maybe an experience that you've had through, clubs, interests, other hobbies. They should really demonstrate who you are as a person and your personality more than a certain skill that you may have. Many top schools look for masters of their crafts. And so I can give you an example. Harvard, for example, right? Harvard, when they pick their students, they pick the best Model UN students that they can because those students immediately go to the Model UN team when they get on campus. And so a lot of these students who are in their club are some of the best debaters and competitors in the nation. That is really what Harvard's looking for. Harvard's going to choose that student over somebody who's, okay, getting, maybe A minuses, B pluses and everything. That's not really what Harvard's looking for. Harvard's looking for the best of the best. Of course, this is for top schools. If you're not aiming for top schools, it's maybe not something you should be worrying too much about. But if you are, of course, keep that in mind. Students should aim to discover their talents and interests. As Emily mentioned, freshman year is really helpful for that. Throughout all of high school, you're really looking to find out what you're interested in, what you want to do for work, because that sets you up very well for college later on in the future. Finding your talents and interests ensures that students are able to maintain motivation to continue these interests. it's very easy for you to stop doing something because you don't care about it. But if you find something that really does speak to you, it's a lot easier to continue, and it's a lot easier to build those resumes, those consistent resumes. It enables a deep understanding of what the student wishes to do, again, helping you look for a career in the future. That's all very good to figure out in high school. It allows for students to form better relationships with those in and around their interests. So if you are a part of a club that you really like, you've now formed a relationship with that teacher who could write you a recommendation, like how Emily mentioned earlier. These teachers who see you both in class and outside of class are very valuable because they're able to write a better essay about you for the college you want to go to. Learning from challenges demonstrates resolve and resilience, which a lot of universities admire. So writing essays about, I won a sports championship, doesn't show growth to colleges. What shows growth is saying, this was a mistake that happened, or this is something that was challenging to me, and this is how I overcame it. This is how I moved past it. This is how I became a better person after this happened. And that's really what colleges are looking for. Things will be challenging and you will need to grow, and colleges need to see that you are somebody capable of growth and you're capable of doing it well. Let's see. If you can fill a niche in your application, that's going to help you stand out. If you do something that a lot of other students don't do, that's going to be far more beneficial than doing something that every other student does. As Emily mentioned before, a lot of Chinese students actually play either the violin or piano. And that is something that when college admissions are looking at, they will look at the instruments and they will skip past it. They don't care because more often than not, maybe 9 out of 10, somebody has piano or violin on their application. And so even looking at the instrument part is not going to be valuable if it's going to be one of those two instruments. So if you can fill a niche, that's going to be very valuable. Playing something like the oboe, the cello, these instruments that are more so not necessarily seen, but very valuable when it comes to orchestra could be very helpful for you. Niches such as learning a lot of languages can also be very helpful for you. Not many people are able to speak more than 1 or 2 languages required by the high school. That's something that's very valuable. Consistency of 1 or more extracurricular activity will help a student stand out. Like I said earlier, if you're able to get into a club in middle school, continuing with that club until the end of your high school career is very valuable because colleges will be able to see that you are committed and that you're dedicated to something or multiple things, and that you're willing to continue, even if it may be challenging, even if it may be long and difficult. If you're able to do it, colleges can see that, and that's very important for colleges to see. It also allows for, again, long-lasting relationships with students as well as teachers in that extracurricular activity. So again, recommendations from your fellow teachers or becoming really good friends with your peers, that's all very helpful in making sure that you can continue, that you stay motivated, and that you have the best shot at getting into the colleges you want to get into. Essays for each student should reflect their own personality and passions, right? So universities are all looking to form a community. That's what they're doing when they're admitting students. It's not about how good your grades are. It's not about what clubs you're in. It's all about the community that they want to provide for their students. The community is actually what brings people in, right? Each college has their own vibe or their own feeling of why you want to go there. And that's really built upon community. So if you fit that community, colleges will choose you, right? Your essays should be true to self. They should be about who you really are, what you really believe, and the person that you want to demonstrate should be yourself and not anybody else. You shouldn't be trying to write essays that fill in what a Dartmouth student should be or what a Harvard student should be. You should not be writing these types of essays. You should not be thinking of yourself as falling into that mold, but rather you're providing your personality to that school. And if they deny you because they don't think you're a good fit, that's a good thing because it means that you're able to find a school that does fit for you and that does match what you want it to be. Most students who end up writing these essays trying to pretend to be a student that they're not, if they get in, they get imposter syndrome because they feel like they don't belong because really they wrote essays that don't represent who they are. Your essays should be unique. They should demonstrate, what you provide to the college. They should be about you. cliches are cliches because they set up a good story, right? So essays such as this was a sports competition that I won. I am an immigrant child from an immigrant family, right? These essays are very, very common, especially, I've seen a lot of Chinese students write essays about I'm an immigrant child. This is what I did, right? I had to read papers for my parents because they couldn't read English, or I had to do a lot of the college admissions process by myself because my parents don't know English, right? These are essays that are very common, and they're common because they do well, because they set up a good story. But because they're cliches, because so many people write these essays, you have to write the best one possible, or else you won't be looked at, right? Everybody else is writing these essays. It's either you make the best essay using this story or you make another story. So I would recommend, if you don't find that writing is really your strong suit, that you look for another story that will still be interesting, will still be engaging, but that still speaks to you. It doesn't have to be a cliche. You have to make sure that you can use all the words that you're able to, right? You only have a certain amount of words, usually 650, 700 sometimes. You only have that many words and you're done. So try not to repeat yourself, try not to use overly flowery language, use language that is complex but concise. You're able to communicate your ideas in a way very quickly and efficiently that doesn't waste the reader's time. You want to be able to tell a very fleshed out story in only just a few words. So be careful with that. As Emily mentioned before, recommendations are very important. And I believe she mentioned that you should be getting recommendations from somebody in the field of interest that you're looking at. Most schools will require 2 recommendations. So I recommend that one recommendation should come from somebody in the field that you're looking at, while the other should come from somebody to demonstrate another aspect of your personality that has not already been mentioned in your resume or in your essay. You want to find another recommendation that can really speak to all the parts of you and what make you special. For example, for me, I spoke with a French teacher at my high school. I never learned French in school. I never learned French in middle school and at the beginning of high school. And this teacher I knew taught French. And I went to him to write my essay because I learned French independently and I needed somebody to test me on whether I knew French or not, right? I was able to get college credit because I was able to pass the test, but he had to administer the test. I asked him for the recommendation letter. He said yes, and he wrote it for me. I think that was something that demonstrated the fact that I worked very hard outside of school, that I was interested in French, and I worked so hard that I was able to pass that test, that I was able to organize everything for myself. So I was able to get that. Certificate, right? So a lot of these parts of recommendations should cover, yes, your interests, yes, what type of student you are, but they should also demonstrate your interests. They should also demonstrate, the drive and the passion that you have, and that's going to be what creates a good recommendation or a good 2 or 3 recommendations, whatever schools require. If a peer recommendation is available, do it. Dartmouth does allow peer recommendations, and my peer recommendation was actually I think one of the things that really pushed me over the edge as to why I was admitted. Of course, they're from your peers, they're from your friends. Choose a friend that you really trust and will write well. Some people don't know how to write very well. Some people's English don't sound very good. So you want to choose somebody who can speak eloquently, who can write a good paper, as well as demonstrate to them why you are a good fit. I was very grateful because my friend was able to show me her recommendation letter for me, and it was very sweet. It was just about a moment in time where I taught a Spanish class during one of the days in the school year, and I think it demonstrates a huge part of why I went to Dartmouth, right? It's about community, it's about learning with other people. And again, your recommendation should all come down to demonstrating who you are as a person. I think you should also, let's see. Oh, if a certain course is not offered for you, you can definitely reach out to teachers or school administrators. Just because the typical path does not allow for you to take a certain course doesn't mean you aren't able to take it. Again, as I mentioned before, I didn't learn French in high school or in middle school. I learned French independently, and I wanted to make sure I had the certificate. That way, colleges knew I understood the language. And because of that, I was able to speak with a French teacher, and I was able to work out a program for me that I was able to take the test, that I was able to get my certification, that I was able to demonstrate that I understood French on a college level after independent study, right? And so just because my school doesn't usually allow people to take two languages at the same time doesn't mean I wasn't able to get certified in both Spanish and French. And so, through talking with school administration, through talking with teachers, I was able to get that. And of course, that helped on my resume. You should also try to reach out to professors, actually. If this is mostly for, senior year, early senior year, late junior year, you don't want to do it too early, but you want to reach out to professors. You can easily find their email addresses on school websites. If you reach out to them, you can read a little bit about some of their articles, some of their work that they've already published. You can reach out and ask them, hey, can we set up a Zoom meeting? Can we talk about this paper that you wrote before? Or, hey, can we set up a Zoom meeting? Can you talk about the department that you're in at the school that you're in? I'm really interested in the school. I want to know more about the department. Sometimes they will say, yes, oh, perfect, let's set up a Zoom meeting. Thankfully, that happened for me. Sometimes they say, oh, unfortunately, I'm very busy, but here's a student that may be interested in talking to you. And they may forward you to a student. Again, any connection is very valuable. Maybe if you don't end up going to that school, you'll still know somebody in the field that you're interested in. So it's always a very helpful thing for college applications. Additionally, when it comes to essays, you want to have a very unique essay. Again, the cliches, the tropes, you see them a lot. Maybe don't write those. You want to make sure that your essay is memorable, that people can remember it. I think a few years ago, there was a TikTok that went viral because this girl didn't use the letter S in her essay, right? And so these essays really help you stand out as an applicant. My essay utilized French. As I mentioned before, I learned French by myself. That was a huge part of my application. And because I used French in my essay, I had the admissions counselor who looked at my essay, and then I also had a French professor look at my essay because somebody needed to confirm that I was using French correctly. Because of that, I had two pairs of eyes on my paper when usually people only have one pair of eyes. So that's also very helpful as well, especially if you're trying to make sure that you get your essay read and they're able to vouch for you. So some advice, like for college, especially, if you didn't learn how to study before, you need to learn how to study for college. Students who perform well in high school with very little effort will struggle a lot if they don't learn how to study in college, because classes in any university, in any college throughout the United States are difficult. It doesn't matter if it's community college, it doesn't matter if it's a top tier school, they will all be difficult because there's so much more material to cover. And so you need to learn how to study and how to study effectively. It doesn't matter how many hours you spend studying. What matters is how much you're able to retain. And so you need to be efficient. Some people can study for 3 hours and memorize, a whole 3 or 4 chapters. And that's valuable because it means you don't have to spend as much time as other people do, right? And so learning how to study early is going to be very important. Even if you don't find yourself struggling in high school, you can just sit in class, you learn it, and you go home, whatever, it's fine. That's great. But the moment you go to college, you have to be ready to start sitting down and looking over your notes, looking over the textbook for 2, 3, 4, even 6 hours at a time. It's going to take a lot more work than it did for high school, just because the environment is different. Additionally, office hours should never be ignored. Even if you feel that you do know the material, you should still be attending office hours because it can be very helpful. If you have questions, or listening to other people's questions is also very helpful to figure out what may or may not be on the exam. So office hours is very, very important. In college, extracurriculars should only be chosen based on a student's interest. In high school, it's very common to see people being in, 8, 9, 10 clubs at a time. That's not realistic in college. If you have 10 clubs, if you're a part of 10 clubs in college, that is almost a death sentence. Each club is about 6 hours a week, 6 to 7 hours a week of commitment. And that's already another class load worth of work, right? You're already spending so much time studying, you're already spending so much time, working on extracurriculars as well. You cannot have up to 10 of them. It's, I would say, 3 maximum. right? Usually people only stick with 1 to 2. You don't need that many extracurriculars in college, especially if you're not looking to go to grad school. Even if you are looking to go to grad school, it's really not that important either. Most grad schools really only look at academics, not really clubs all too much. So you should be doing them based on your passions, based on your interests. It's going to take a lot of time for you to do well in college. So you want to make sure that a lot of that time is spent on the things that you like to do, not things that you think would help in a resume. Freshman year of college should be your chance to try out new classes, new clubs, and new interests. Like Emily said, for freshman year of high school, that's very important, but it's the same as college as well. Sophomore year is when you declare your major. So you only really have 1 year to try out as many things that you want to try out, including your major in mind. That way you can see if you like it. If you try out your intended major too late in your junior year or something, and you want to change it, it's too late then, right? You already declared, you don't have enough time to finish your classes, and you're going to get a degree that you don't really want to be in. So you want to make sure you try as much as you can, as early as you can. In terms of growth that I had in college, something that I learned was friendships in college are actually some of the longest lasting friendships a student can make. College will be probably the last time any student is able to make friends outside of the workforce. And that's very important because these friendships will last you a lifetime. These friendships will last you more than just the next 4 years in college. But also having a good, solid group of friends will make sure that you develop the social skills necessary for your career in the future, necessary for you in the future as well. Over prioritizing academics can harm students in the long run. So students can miss out on making and maintaining valuable friendships for the future. College requires that students are consistent with their work. They have to do well consistently. And so if they over prioritize academics, if they feel very lonely, if they feel very sad, if they are not being supported by people around them, they're not likely to do well. And so friendships are a very valuable asset in not only college but high school to maintain a person's livelihood and to maintain their well-being and happiness, because that comes before grades, right? You can't do well grade-wise if you don't feel well. So you want to make sure that those are all being prioritized equally. Students who, let's see, yes, okay. Students who prioritize their academics may find it difficult to adjust to university life in college, right? So in high school, some students may feel very, very good because they score very well, or they're the top student in their class, or whatever it may be. They may feel very good about that, but if they don't change their mindset in college, they're going to come to a rude awakening. Many students, especially in top schools, do well, and they probably do better than you do, right? You may be the best in your small town, but you will not be the best when it comes to a top tier school. And so if you think that your happiness should be coming from your number 1 or your number 2 spot, you're not going to be very happy in college. You really need to find happiness through the clubs that you do, through the interests that you do. You need to find happiness through the friends that you make, not through the grades that you make. And so this is something that a lot of people at top tier schools struggle with, and that's why they get imposter syndrome. When they don't see themselves as number 1, they think that they don't belong anymore. And that's not the case. You were chosen to be in a school because the college thought that you fit there. And that should be all the reason that you're there at that school, right? Because you fit there, because you're part of that community, not because your grades are number 1, right? Separating oneself from academics is the most valuable lesson that I learned, right? So all of what I was saying earlier, making sure that you separate yourself from the number 1, number 2, or top 10 spot, whatever it may be. You should be finding happiness and motivation from other things besides your schoolwork, because when you're graduated from school, how are you going to find happiness if you're still depending on your schoolwork to find happiness, right? And then just to reiterate, some classes are hard, right? They will just be plain hard. I know some professors who will say, nobody gets an A in my class, and that's it. And that's not because you're a bad student. That may just be because of that's how the professor teaches. That may be just because of that's how, the class is run. It's just the difficulty of the class. That's not the student's fault. And a student shouldn't feel bad because they didn't do well in that class. That's why students should really be separating themselves and realizing that their academics is only a part of their college career, not the whole part of their college career. And then the last thing I want to mention is college is best spent with other people. So the reason why you're going to college is because of the people there, of the community. In actuality, you can find almost all of the information that you learn in college online. A lot of the information that I use for my research, that I use for my papers, that I use for my assignments come from online sources. And that's not because the college offers me nothing. The college is offering me a group of people that are, great friends to me, that are great, that are possible business opportunities. I've been able to get jobs through the network, the alumni network that Dartmouth has to offer. And that's something that's very valuable that you're not going to get if you just do, research online, right? And you need to be able to spend the time with people, grow socially, and that's going to be what is most valuable coming out of college. It's the people that you meet there, not just the grades that you get. You can get those grades anywhere else. You can get those grades at a state school. You can get those grades at a community college. You can get a degree at a community college. It's really the people at that school that will make your college career, that will make you the better person in the future. And I think that's everything I have to cover.
Oh, thank you so much, Daniel. Yeah, I like that part that you choose the school because of the person. Yeah, because we always living in like a society with lots of person, and working with people is more important than anything else. Yeah. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, we plan to have 3 students to share with us, but today the other student have some personal issue. He was having like a trip outside, school trip, and he cannot find a good Wi-Fi. So today we only have 2 students share. Thank you so much again for Emily and Daniel. Your ideas and your opinions about all the things in high school and college are very important and very helpful. A little bit mind-blowing for me also. Yeah. Thank you. So we'll end here, okay? So have a good night, guys. See you.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.